Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Frozen Heart, Fated Soul. Episode 7. Chapter 61. Alejandro. Alejandro. I opened my eyes to find Darien leaning over me. Where was I? I looked around, aware of the pain in my body and how tired I felt. Then it all came back. Kiera. The pain was still there, but with the exhaustion, I felt it was duller. I looked away, shoving Darien far from me. Get out of my way, I said hoarsely. It seems like my throat hasn't healed yet. AI. What are you doing, man? Substance abuse? We need you at your strongest. What if an attack happened when you were out? We'd be thanks to your reckless behavior. Darien growled. I knew he was scared that I almost killed myself, but I wouldn't die that fast. I wasn't that stupid. I also knew I didn't think of anything but how I was feeling. Kiera. How did she mess up my head so easily? I sat up and turned away from Darien. I didn't want him here. Leave. I said quietly. No. What happened, Elle? He asked, placing a hand on my shoulder. Nothing. I don't need your pity. I growled, standing up and turning my back on him. He shook his head softly. This isn't pity, it's concern for my brother. Darien said, frowning. I haven't seen you like this in years. Is it her? My eyes flashed and I grabbed him by the throat. I knew at my current strength he could rip free with ease, but it seemed he didn't want to. I slammed him against the wall, feeling every muscle in my body scream for reprieve. There is no one in my life that matters. I'm a monster, remember? I said harshly. His eyes softened. You're not. Only you see it like that. He said, pulling himself free. She's strong, Alejandro, strong enough to be that queen by your side. Stronger than Jasmine by far, and she's already won our pack over in such a short time, something Jasmine hasn't been able to achieve in years. Yes, she's respected, but she's not loved. I looked at him, not even having the energy to argue. Kiera was so lovable, who wouldn't warm up to her? Jasmine is nothing to me, and that's what I need. I said, turning away. Neither of us needed to say Kiera's name to know who we were talking about. You need to cut yourself some slack. You are capable of treating her like a queen, and deep down you know it. Who better to protect her than the Alpha King himself? Why didn't he get it? I could also hurt her. You have done nothing but take care of her, even her father can see that. Yet, well, if he knew how good I've taken care of her, he wouldn't like it. I said, without my usual smirk. I had no energy for sadistic humor right now. Claim her before the blood moon. What if her mate shows up? He said quietly. I smirked now though, turning and looking at him. You sure are dumb, I remarked. He raised an eyebrow before he looked at me with shock. Wait, do you really think she's? I've heard sometimes you have a connection. I don't need a blood moon to confirm what I already know. I said quietly. Then that's perfect. Alejandro. She's the rightful queen, you can't give her position to someone else. Moments ago you were okay with me giving up my mate's position to Kiera, I said. Because I was right, she's suited for you. He proclaimed stubbornly. I shook my head. No one understood. No. Then what about the mating ceremony? What will you do? I now turned and gave him a cold smirk. What do you think? You're hosting it, I said. His eyes widened in surprise. My presence wasn't really needed, I only talked to a few of them. I hated the display of lovesick pups like it was a senior prom or some. I still think Kiera is the best choice. If you really care for her, keeping her by your side is the best option. It's a two-way thing, Alejandro. She cares for you too. He persisted quietly, gathering up the empty syringes with a deep frown on his face. Who said I cared? I said icily. He gave me a small, defeated sigh. Don't be so stubborn that you'll regret it later, he said. I already regretted it. She moved on and linked my nephew. Perfect. My decision is made. I'm making Jasmine the queen. Then what? Kiera will choose someone and leave maybe? Only for her to be put in danger. Do you really think anyone else can protect her? Just drop it, Darien. I hissed icily. I'm trying to get through that thick skull of yours, Alejandro. Please just stop being so stubborn. He snapped. I growled murderously, my aura now filling the room like an entity of its own. He clenched his jaw and lowered his head in submission. This is my final warning to you. Because you're my second in command, I will let it slide. Don't bring her up again. I turned and I walked out. I was not going to let Kiera mess up my plans. I needed to stay away from her at all costs under the blood moon, and I will, no matter what. The day had come, I had stuck to my rule and avoided Kiera at all costs. Almost, once or twice I watched her from afar, staying far enough away that she didn't sense me. It kind of satisfied me that she was smiling. Guess I was the only who fell so crap inside. It was for the best. She had her whole life in front of her and plenty of youngs to choose from. Not that I didn't enjoy beating out of any wolf I knew had flirted with her during training. Yeah, I enjoyed it. As for Rayhan, I avoided him too. I didn't want to see or speak to him. I'm not sure why, but that one hit harder. I don't think it was because of what happened between them, it was because he was my nephew. It just made it 100 times worse. I looked in the mirror, staring at my tattooed torso. I had changed my earring for a little dagger today. I pulled on the crisp white shirt and buttoned it halfway up, leaving a few buttons open, showing off my necklaces. Even if I wasn't going to attend the actual ball, I still would need to meet a few alphas later. There was a knock on the door. By the scent, I knew it was Jasmine. Enter, I said coldly. I had been staying in the extra room I had, not wanting to run into Kiera at the mansion. The door opened and she stepped inside, smelling of expensive perfume mixed with her usual scent. Ready? She asked in a soft tone. Remember my rules? I said quietly. She walked over, looking up at me dressed in a black shimmering gown, my favorite color. Sure. Sometimes relieving a little stress helps. I know a few ways, she said, placing a hand on my arm. I looked at her coldly. Why didn't she even look appealing anymore? Don't push me, Jasmine, I said quietly. Okay, I won't. But if ever, you know I'm here, she said, replacing her hand on my arm after pulling it back earlier. You can step away from this engagement if you want. I won't ever be anything more than this to you, I said coldly, pulling out of her touch. I love you and I don't care. I'm staying, she said firmly. Her loss then. Turning around I walked out. Let's get this over and done with. I looked up at the night sky, the full moon shaded with that hue of red invisible to the human eye. The blood moon had arrived. Kiera 2 hours later, Raven and Rayhana stepped back to admire their work. Okay. I think she looks sick, Raven said with satisfaction. That lip color is definitely hers, it just adds to it, doesn't it? Rayhana added. Yes, girl. This babe's going to have every unmated wolf drooling, not to mention most women wear long gowns to the ball, Rayhana said smirking. I wish we had like a camera to see what's happening out there, Raven said. I raised an eyebrow. I am here, listening to you two as if I'm not. Can I see? I asked, feeling a bit nervous about what they'd done to me. Sure. Rayhana said. She turned me slowly towards the mirror and I stared at myself in shock. I looked stunning. Regal even. Raven had styled my hair into a very high, stylish updo, leaving a few long, loosely curled strands to frame my face. As for my face, Rayhana had done a heavy smoky eye in glittering golds and blacks, with some thick black lashes that weren't too heavy but enhanced my long ones. My face was bronzed and glowed to match the shimmering bronzer I had applied to my body. She had painted my lips a matte deep pink that really did suit my skin tone. It was the only pop of color from my otherwise very bronzed golden look. My heart pounded as I looked at myself. I prayed I found my mate tonight because I looked amazing, if I do say so myself. I felt a pang of sadness behind my smile as I remembered Alejandro. I will not think of him, not tonight, not ever. So, Rayhana said, jumping on her toes. I love it, thank you girls, I said, giving them both a smile. I picked up the large statement earrings I'd brought and put them on. The final thing was the delicate moon necklace. After Raven H0OKED it on for me, I stood up. Currently, I was only wearing the silk bodysuit that pushed me right up. Okay, let's get you into that dress, Raven said. With a lot of their help, I managed to get into it. The girls untangled a few strands from the bottom of the dress, before finally they were satisfied. I then slipped on my 2-inch heels, a size that didn't strain my ankle too much. Perfume left and you're done, Rayhana said, reaching for my Armani Diamonds fragrance. One spray, I said. I didn't want my scent clouded. Kiera, how long? Dad's voice came through the link. On my way. I gave both girls a tight hug before turning to the mirror and taking a final look at my dress that hugged my figure perfectly, emphasizing my curvy hips and thighs, slim waist, and cleavage. Thank you, both of you. Honestly, I love my hair and my makeup. Thank you. Well, after seeing you, I'm seriously questioning. Raven teased, tapping me. Rayhana laughed. I don't blame you, she said. I shook my head, amused at their antics. Well, all the best babe, Raven said. Good luck, I guess we may not see you tonight. So have fun. Rayhana added. Here, C0ND0MS, Raven said, holding out a box. I gave her a look. No thanks. I'm due my period any day, so no chance of getting pregnant. I said, amused. Oh, okay then, enjoy all his milky goodness. She replied with a smirk. You. Rayhana said, bursting into laughter. Honestly, I don't even know if I'll meet him tonight. And on top of that, who said I'm going to jump him? I asked. Raven looked at me incredulously. Seriously? With your track record, you will. She said, making me pout. The girl had a point. If I didn't find my mate at least. No. Don't think of him. I pushed the thought of a certain man out of my head and turned to the door, taking a deep breath. Well, Dad's waiting for me, have fun. Say hi to the boys for me. Raven said. Let me know if any of you find your mate okay. I looked at her, knowing behind that casual demeanor she was nervous. I'll text from Dad's phone because I'm not taking mine, I replied. I'll definitely video call with the boys. Okay. Rayhana said, send pictures. I left my room and made my way to the stairs, the light dazzling off the gems on my dress. I walked down the steps, seeing Dad standing at the bottom, looking handsome in a black tux. He looked up when he heard me. His frown softened as he looked me over. A soft smile crossed his lips, but I was shocked to see he looked almost sad. How do I look? Like a woman, he said, taking my hand and helping me down the last 3 steps. My heart skipped a beat as I smiled up at him. Thank you, Dad. So, how good do I look? Almost as good as Mom. I teased. He kissed my forehead softly. Tonight, I'd say you rival her. He said, caressing my cheek, that look of sadness still lingering in his eyes. Dad. You look upset. I said, despite the fact I was smiling at his compliment. I only wished I had been able to record it. Obviously, tonight might be the day I hand you over to another. I just hope he treats you like the queen you are. Don't worry, Dad, I'm yours and Mom's daughter. No one will mistreat me. I can handle myself and make their life hell if needed. I added defiantly. Dad smirked. Good. He said, offering me his arm as he led me out of the mansion. Our ride was waiting for us. The extravagant mansion looked beyond amazing, lit up so brightly. Even the gardens were illuminated dazzlingly with hundreds of fairy lights and lanterns. Wow, it's beautiful, I said breathlessly. And 100 times brighter than usual, Dad remarked. Courtesy of the king. A voice said from behind us. Dad and I turned to see Darien and Serena standing there. Both were dressed smartly. Serena looked stunning in a pale peach gown. Dad frowned at Darien's comment as he scanned the garden. He said. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be because of me? It didn't matter, he doesn't care. Maybe he just wanted a change. You look beautiful, Kiera, Serena said as the four of us headed inside. Thank you, so do you. I replied with a smile. Where is Alejandro? Dad asked. He won't be attending, Darien said, looking uncomfortable. Dad's frown only deepened. Why not? He asked. I'm not sure, Darien said. Dad looked him in the eye. Although Dad was the stronger alpha, Darien was an alpha who had stepped down and was able to look Dad in the eye equally. I wondered what that was about, but I soon decided to forget Dad's issue as we stepped inside the stunning entrance hall. People in gorgeous gowns and smart suits roamed around. A mix of scents and luxury wines filled my nose. My smile grew as I smelled two very familiar scents. Dad, I'm off, I said, letting go of his arm and hurrying ahead. I slipped through the crowds, ignoring the eyes that ran over me. The murmurs that I was Alpha Elijah's daughter followed me like a whisper in the wind. My smile grew as my eyes fell on two men. They stood side by side, Liam dressed in a grey suit and Damon in a deep navy. Guys! I said. They both turned and I saw Damon give me a wistful smile. It seemed he had hopes that I'd be his mate. Pretending I didn't see it, I walked over to them as Liam closed the gap between us and lifted me in his arms, hugging me tightly. Goddess, Kia! I missed you! He said, making me smile in amusement. Ah, I would say I missed you too, but I enjoyed my freedom. I teased. When he finally set me down, I turned to Damon, giving him a tight hug too. He hugged me back and I felt Liam watching us. I didn't feel as awkward. Although it had only been a few weeks, it felt like it had been so much longer. Something about this pack, Alejandro, everything seemed so different. Not mates then? Liam said. Nope, Damon said, with a small smile. Now you can rejoice. Hey, I wouldn't have minded it, Liam said, now looking at me. Your aura, it's impressive, Damon said seriously. I shrugged. A lot has happened. Yeah, I know. It's not been long, but you seem different. Like you've finally become a woman. Liam teased. I had filled them both in over the group chat, but seeing my aura was completely different than hearing about it. A familiar scent invaded my nose and I turned to see Rayhan, dressed in a black suit, walking over. I felt two pairs of eyes bore into me from behind and I knew they wondered if I had found my mate. I mouthed to Rayhan. Play along. He smirked, giving me a tiny nod as he looked me over. Mate. He said, with an intense look in his eyes, but I knew he was trying to hide his amazement. He stopped in front of me. Mate, I said before wrapping my arms around his neck. Damon said, shocked. Whoa, really? Liam said, also shocked. You're lying. Why do you say that? Rayhan asked, keeping his eyes on me. I was so close to bursting into laughter. I can sense it, Liam replied, shrugging. I giggled. Yeah, not mates, I said. You look amazing though, Rayhan said. Thank you. I want to see who gets Kiera. I'm guessing some alpha in his early 20s, Liam said as Rayhan met them both with a hug. Gets? Am I prized to be one? Well, you do kind of look like a trophy right now. Damon teased and I glared at him. Somehow, that felt like the icebreaker between us. The other two men nodded in agreement and I rolled my eyes. I knew of the four of us I had the highest possibility of finding my mate, as women were often younger than the male by a few years in many cases. Most males end up finding their mates in their early 20s, unlike the females, who often find theirs pretty soon after turning 18. Well, until we sniff our mates out, how about we get a drink? Rayhan suggested. I looked around, looking at all the males. So far, nothing out of the ordinary had caught my nose. Drinks sound good, Damon said, motioning an Omega waiter over. We all took a flute of champagne when I felt the sudden urge to look up. I turned and looked around the vast hall. There was a balcony that spread across the entire length of the hall, leading to the second floor. I scanned it. It was mostly empty apart from a few couples. Nothing out of the ordinary caught my Kiera. Damon asked concerned. You okay? Yeah, I said, feeling a pair of eyes on me. My heart pounded as I spun around, seeing the shadow of someone move back. They were far too high up for me to catch a scent. Excuse me, I didn't wait for a reply as I sped up, the urge to find that person overtaking me. Alejandro, I stood on the balcony at the front center of the mansion 2 floors up, as I looked at the illuminated gardens, satisfied. Kind of dazzling tonight, isn't it? It doesn't really make sense when we're wolves, Jasmine said from next to me. I didn't reply, I knew what she was insinuating and she wasn't wrong. I had asked for it to be light enough for Kiera. A change is good, I said coldly. She nodded, smart enough to keep her mouth shut. I turned away, trying to calm the emotions that swirled within me. I wanted to see her, but at the same time, I was scared. What would I do when my eyes fell upon her? I know I was sure she was my mate. But I still wanted confirmation. Even if I would never pursue her. You're restless, Jasmine murmured. I'm not, I said coldly. You are welcome to join the ball. I'd rather spend it with you, she said, stepping closer to me. I turned away and walked to the door that led out to the hall, overlooking the grand hall beneath. Soft music could be heard all the way up here and the sound of laughter, chatter, and the hustle and bustle of everyone downstairs filled my ears. I stepped out into the hall and over to the balcony looking far below. My eyes scanned the crowd for her. A sharp, blinding ray of light glittered from something in the midst of the crowd and I looked down to see Kiera hugging Rayhan, the light reflecting off her dress. My heart skipped a beat at how breathtaking she looked. Dressed like a goddess, she stood out from the entire crowd. Her glittering dress accentuated her killer curves. Every time I saw her felt like the first time, distracting me endlessly. But this time, it was at a whole new level. She took my breath away and it messed with my resolve. I felt a strong, sizzling pull towards her. My assumption was confirmed. She was my mate. My entire body was on edge and my heart was pounding louder than ever. The burning desire to go to her threatened to consume me. I didn't miss the men staring at her, but how can I complain when she had all my attention locked on her too? Still, I wanted to pull her into my arms and tell them that she belongs to me. The only problem was, she couldn't be mine. My heart pounded in my chest as she turned, laughing about something, her radiant face glowing with that dazzling smile on her face. In the large hall full of hundreds of people I couldn't make out what she was saying, but just seeing her happy, I felt an ache inside. She didn't need me, I had been right. She was here, dressed like a queen, ready to find her mate. A mate who wasn't good enough for her. I don't know what Selene was playing at, but Kiera deserved better. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I wanted to smell her, just once, to calm the anger and distress that was beginning to burn within me, but she was too far away to smell from here, or to make out in the large hall of hundreds of scents. Either way, I guess it was for the better. The urge to go down there and mark her suddenly overcame me. The longer I looked at her, the more my resolve was weakening. I couldn't do that. She was a goddess and I was a monster. I turned away quickly, walking back into the room. Alejandro, are you okay? Your heart is racing. Jasmine said with concern as she approached me. I looked into her eyes. This was my decision, Jasmine. I had to forget Kiera. But how do you forget someone who seemed to become your entire life? Your reason to breathe and carry on? I couldn't. Even when I suddenly grabbed Jasmine's face and kissed her, all I could think about was Kiera. I needed to forget. Touching Jasmine repulsed me. I felt my anger growing, hating myself for this, hating Jasmine, hating this entire situation. She kissed me back, I could taste blood. If she was smart she'd back off, but she was as stupid as ever. She locked her arms around my neck, kissing me hungrily. Did she want to die? Because I would kill her one day. Her hand ran down my chest as she moved us towards the sofa. Kiera. The golden goddess was all that was on my mind. I dropped onto the sofa as Jasmine climbed into my lap. This was the life I chose. Stop thinking. Her kisses became hungrier, the air filled with her arousal as she pulled my jacket off, pulling open my shirt buttons and kissing my neck. I grabbed her by the hair and yanked her back as I kissed her neck roughly. She sounded loudly. Mark her. Get this over with. No matter how hard I told myself that, I couldn't. She grinned against me but her touch was off-putting. She tugged my head up, cupping my face as she kissed me and I gripped her. Focus, Alejandro. I kissed her back, trying to get into this. Just then, I heard a door open and the most delicious, intoxicating scent I'd ever smelled filled my senses. The rich scent of hazelnut chocolate mixed with something so deep and seductive that I felt myself throb with need and desire. I pulled away from Jasmine, my eyes snapping to the door. My heart was pounding as I looked straight into Kiera's beautiful eyes that were filled with 1,000 shades of emotions. Our hearts beat as one, the rhythm in sync. My stomach twisted at the pain that dominated all other emotions within those stunning eyes of hers. If she looked perfect before, she was out of this world right now. The bond had enhanced everything. I became hyper-aware of every millimeter of her skin, the way her lips dipped in the center, the slender tip of her nose. The exact shade of her silky locks. We're busy, Jasmine said, in the distance. Kiera ignored her, her eyes set on me as if she was giving me one chance, she took. I clenched my jaw. This was it, my chance to push her away completely. Using all the determination I could muster, I turned back to Jasmine. Ignore her, I said, in a hoarse whisper thick with emotions for the woman that stood in that doorway. I heard her take a sharp intake of breath. I clenched my jaw, using all my willpower to not look at her. Jasmine smirked, gripping my face as she kissed me passionately. I held on to her tightly. I was fighting against myself not to rush to Kiara. I hated myself for this, but I had to. I had hurt her enough. We weren't the right match, all I did was hurt her. I'm sorry, amor mio, but this is the last time I'll hurt you. Just enough to push you away forever. A barely audible whimper left those plush lips of hers as I kissed Jasmine, shattering 2 hearts in the process. 2 hearts that should have beat as one. But mine was too dark and toxic for her pure one. I heard her turn, her heart thumping erratically, the tinkle of her dress, and the sound of her heels as she rushed from the room. Closing my eyes as I heard the distant, suppressed, heart-wrenching sob that fell from her lips as she ran as far away from me as possible. I pushed Jasmine away from me roughly, clutching my head as I tried to suppress the pain and guilt that burned my insides. It hurt so badly, but I'm sure it was nothing compared to the pain I had caused her. Alejandro, Jasmine said quietly. But I didn't want to hear from her. I guess I got what I wanted. Mission accomplished. I'm sure I just broke her, and with it I destroyed myself. Jasmine stroked my leg as she came close. Ale. My eyes blazed red as I grabbed her by the neck. It's alpha to you, I growled. Stay away from me. She trembled in fear as I dropped her and stood up. I was a monster, and it was high time everyone remembered that. I walked through the halls, my heart pounding with each step. I gasped as a deep, intoxicating scent hit my nose. I'd never smelled anything so addictive, and seductive that it made me dizzy. My heart thumped as I inhaled it. It smelled so much like Alejandro's. Just a billion times more tempting if that were even possible. I stopped outside a door and opened it. My mate was here, and deep down I felt I knew exactly who it was. I looked into the room, but the sight that reached my eyes was one that would always remain. The painful sight of my mate making out with another woman. For a moment, it felt as if time had stopped. His gaze snapped towards me and my heart suddenly exploded with a surge of emotions. Alejandro was my mate. My king. My other half. Despite the pain I felt, I looked into his eyes, giving him the chance to come to me. We would work on this. We could make it okay. Please. My heart was crumbling and I couldn't hold it together forever. Please, Alejandro. Jasmine said something, but I didn't even hear her, trying to stop my broken heart from shattering completely. Ignore her. His deep husky voice came, sending my stomach into a storm. His words are, PPD through me, and I felt as if my heart was being torn out of my chest. Pain like nothing before seared through me like 1,000 whiplashes. It only became worse when he turned back to Jasmine and kissed her. I couldn't do this. I know I said I'd fight for my mate, but how do you fight for someone who is currently making out with another, without caring that his mate was standing right there? The agony of his betrayal and actions are, PPD through me. Deep down, I felt that perhaps my mate would reject me. We all have that fear. But having it happen was worse than any nightmare one could conjure up. I turned and ran, stumbling as I rushed to the steps, losing one of my heels as I tripped. My hands clamped over my mouth to stifle my sobs that I had no control over. I kicked the other shoe off, running down the steps as fast as I could and towards the entrance. Pushing through the throngs of people, I ignored the shouts of annoyance. I was out in the fresh air and I made for the entrance gate. I just wanted to get from here. I had just reached the gates, rushing out of the compound and past security, feeling my emotions growing, my aura bubbling to the surface. I heard someone shout but I didn't care as I sped up, running as fast as I could. Pain rushed up my ankle but it was nothing compared to what I felt inside. Darkness enveloped me the further away that I got from the brightly lit venue. I fell to the ground as pain and rejection made my wolf howl in pain. I wrapped my arms around myself, as I rocked myself. It was too much to endure. Tears trickled down my cheeks. This night was meant to be every girl's dream, but mine had become a nightmare. It all made sense, the connection that I felt with him. The fact I wasn't able to stay away from him, but maybe that was all it was, a pull that he had no interest or need for. Please go away. I sobbed into the silence, clutching my chest. But there was nowhere for it to go and deep down I knew my wolf believed he'd come to us. The crippling pain that engulfed my entire being was too much for me and I felt weak as if a million knives had been impaled in me. I tried shifting but my wolf had shut off, making me feel as if a part of me had died. No, don't abandon me. I sobbed in my head. She was all I had right now but all I got was a howl of agony in return. The final straw that turned my shattered heart to dust. She wanted her mate and there was nothing I said that would make her return until she was ready to. How dare he? How could he do this to us? Blinding anger and power rushed forth, illuminating the darkness in a dazzling purple. Kiera! Someone shouted. Angel, you need to calm down. I recognized that voice, but right now I wanted a release for all the rage and pain that was consuming me. Elijah, I was talking with another alpha when I sensed a surge of power. I turned sharply as I stared out the window. A dazzling purple light illuminated the sky. Kiera! I rushed out as fast as I could, seeing it was coming from outside of the walls that surrounded the grounds. I ran as fast as I could, seeing Darien rushing out of the gates ahead of me. Many of Alejandro's warriors looked alarmed as we all saw the scene before us. She stood there, her entire body enveloped in purple flames. Unharmed yet holding so much power, it stunned even me. Kiera! Darien shouted, trying to get close to her. This wasn't a normal aura which a person could sense. This was a power in itself. I had never seen anything like this. It awed me that she was this strong, but at the same time, I was worried about what had caused her to get so upset and the attention she was bringing to herself. One thought twisted deep within me. Rejection. Angel, you need to calm down, I said, trying to step towards her. The force of her power was keeping me at bay and I was worried it would attract the enemy like last time. The heat of her power burned. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get to her. Not only was she emitting heat but her power had seemingly created a barrier around her. One even I couldn't penetrate. Kiera! Listen to me, baby girl! I shouted. Kiera, please? I tried through the mind link, but I was met with a block. How do we get close? She turned her head. Tears streamed down her cheeks and all I wanted was to kill that who did this to her. No one hurt my girl and got away with it. A distant unearthly shriek filled the air and my eyes flashed. Her power had alerted them. Before I could react, a black blur rushed past me, pushing against Kiera's powers. The immense aura made me step back. There was only one person who had that much power, a power that Kiera now rivaled. Alejandro's. I watched helplessly as he pushed through the force field reaching her and pulled Kiera into his arms. "Don't touch me!" Kiera shrieked, pushing him back. To my surprise, he didn't react. "Look, don't talk to me! Stay away from me, you!" She shrieked. "Kiera, you need to control, don't. And I mean don't tell me what to do." Her powers only grew and I could almost see Alejandro's black aura against her vibrant purple one. How was Kiera standing up to him? That wasn't normal. "I have no choice," he said quietly. She raised her hand to strike him and in a move faster than the eye could keep up he grabbed her wrist, spinning her around and striking her neck, knocking her unconscious. Her head slumped back against him and he caught her around the waist, looking down at her with a deep unreadable frown on his face. Her powers vanished and for a moment I wasn't able to move forward. It wasn't because of her power, which was now gone. I watched Alejandro look down at Kiera with a deep, thoughtful expression on his face, and I wondered what was going through his mind. Why did it feel like I was intruding? I frowned, pushing the thought aside as I walked over to them. "I'll take her," I said quietly. He nodded, not even saying a word as he lifted her bridal style and placed her in my arms, almost gently. I frowned as he turned away. A thought occurred to me, but it felt too far-fetched. No. It wasn't possible. "Alejandro," I began. What did I want to say anyway? "I better go deal with them." It was all he said before he rushed off in a blur. "I'm heading back to the mansion with Kiera." I mind-linked Liam, quickly filling him in on what happened with Kiera. "Wait for us, we haven't found our mates anyway," Liam replied. I looked down at my daughter, her cheeks stained with tears, as she sniffed in her sleep. Who had hurt her? I intended to find out, and if it was who I thought it was, then what? Raven, my heart was racing as Rayhana squeezed my hand. Both of us were staring at the television, the eerie music only adding to our tense state. The front door opened and Rayhana screamed, making me flinch before the light was flipped on as someone entered the living room. My heart skipped a beat when I saw my favorite boys. Both of their blue eves were on me. I almost shrieked as I jumped over the sofa, unable to decide which one to hug first. I pulled them both into a hug. Well, I was practically hanging from their necks, thanks to my tiny size. They both wrapped their arms around me and Damon chuckled. "Someone missed us." More enthusiastically than Kia, Liam said, kissing the top of my head. I smiled as I let go of them. "Okay boys, you can put me down," I said, still suspended in the air thanks to their hold on me. I was about to say more but my smile vanished when I saw Uncle L carrying Kiera. What happened? Rayhan shut the front door, running his fingers through his long hair. "Her powers," he said, as we all followed Uncle, who was silent, upstairs. Only Rayhana shook her head and returned to the movie. I hurried ahead, opening the door to Kiara's bedroom and switched the light on. Uncle L put her down on the bed. His silence was scaring me a little. I looked at the boys who simply shrugged. Sometimes I wished I had my wolf already, at least then I could mind link. Is there anything I should know? Uncle L said, now turning and looking directly at me. My eyes widened in surprise as I stepped back, happy when Damon and Liam stepped aside, allowing me to move back and stand between them. Their body heat and their presence made me feel a bit better under Uncle L's dangerous look. What do you mean? I asked my alpha, who now looked at me calmly, yet his eyes were a dark cobalt, giving away that he was anything but calm right now. Kiara found her mate today. Wait, what? Liam said, his hand on my shoulder, sending a pleasant tingle through me. She was upset. Why do you think she lost control? Uncle L growled. So, you think she was rejected? Damon said, frowning. Why else would she be upset? He snapped as if we were a bunch of stupid kids. I guess that's what we looked like. Rayhan frowned as he stepped forward. That's understandable, but why do you think Raven would know anything? He asked. I nodded, frowning. Because Raven knows her best. I don't know anything. I replied. I wouldn't rat Kiara out on anything, and in all honesty, I had no idea about her mate. Okay, let me rephrase that. Uncle L said. Alejandro. My heart skipped a beat and I looked at him. What about the king? I said, daring not to look at Rayhan. I looked back at Uncle L, square in the eye, although I could feel his aura weighing down on me, urging me to submit to him and forcing me to look down. But even then, I wouldn't rat Kia out. I fought against the urge to spill it out. I bit on the inside of my cheek, trying not to focus on the urge to tell him everything. Is there anything I should know? Uncle L asked dangerously. He got angry a few times. I said, sighing, trying not to focus on that urge to tell the truth. And attacked Rayhan. I looked at the grey-eyed man now as he raised his eyebrows before nodding. Nothing out of the ordinary though. He said, shrugging. Uncle L frowned but said nothing more. I wanted to take a deep breath of relief, but I knew he could throw something at me at any time. I'm so glad Rayhana didn't follow us upstairs, or she may have given something away. Stay with Kia, Raven. I want all of you out. Uncle L said, now glaring at Rayhan and then at Damon. Well, I don't really blame him. To be fair, my girl was a catch and any man would want a piece of her. So really, Uncle L couldn't blame them. Damon simply nodded, looking at me and Kia with concern before he turned away and left the room. Liam walked over to the bed, giving his sister a soft kiss on the forehead before ruffling my hair and walking out. Rayhan flashed Uncle a smirk before he followed the other two out. When she wakes up, call me. Uncle L said to me. I nodded, and once he left, I rushed over and locked the door. No way was I going to call his Growly back in here. Not without Auntie Red around to help keep him on a leash. I walked back to the bed, looking at my friend's tear-stained face and brushed them away. Oh babe, who did this to you? My heart ached for her and I wanted to really beat out of her mate. I undid her hair and took her earrings off before I closed the curtains and turned the lamp on. Covering her with the blanket, I got into bed as well. I couldn't rest, not when I was so worried. But somehow, sleep soon came. A sob awoke me and I jolted up to see Kiera sitting up with her arms around her legs as she cried into her knees. "Kia, what happened?" I asked, wrapping my arms around her. She turned and hugged me tightly as she cried softly, and I realized from her puffy eyes that she had been awake for a while. "He's my mate, Raven, and he doesn't want me," she whispered, sobbing into my shoulder. My heart thumped. By he did she mean Alejandro? "You mean Alpha Butthole?" I whispered. She nodded and I bit back a gasp. It all made sense. Uncle L's words. Kiera's heartbreak. "Oh babe, he doesn't deserve you if he can't see how special you are," I whispered, wishing I knew what to say. He simply said ignore her and kissed Jasmine. She said, now pulling away and hugging herself once more. I had nothing to offer. "Let's go home, babe. That's better for us. Liam and Damon are leaving in the morning." She remained silent before she suddenly sat up. "He broke me, Raven. I'm not going to make it easy for him and just go home. Dr. Callum mentioned that Dad wanted me to stay here because it's safer here. Well, that's the plan. If he thinks he can make me run, then he's sorely mistaken." She stood up, wiping her face. I could sense her strong aura as she walked over to the mirror, looking at her reflection. "Kia, what do you want to do?" I knew she was hurt, but I also knew Kiera was her parents' daughter. Reckless, headstrong, and determined. "I'm going to attend his engagement. I don't care if he wants me or not. The bond will mess with him. I'm going to make this so hard for him, that he will at least struggle to remain composed." "So, you are going to attend your mate's engagement?" I asked. Hats off to her. My heart would be too broken to do that, but I knew Kiera was hurting and she was reacting because of it. "Then we need a dress," I said. "I'll leave it to you. Please," she said. Despite her calm voice, I saw the storm of emotions in her glassy eyes. I smiled. "Sure thing. Just tell me the color." "Black," she said, looking at her reflection. I nodded. I guess we had to somehow outdo her look today. This was going to be a mission, but one I was going to see through to the end. I smirked at the fact she chose black. Jasmine had set a rule for her guests to wear pastels. Well, too bad for her. "Please don't tell anyone about who my mate is," she said quietly. I nodded. "I won't, I swear," I said. Standing up, I walked over to her and gave her a tight hug. She hugged me back and I felt a pang of pain. Her heart was racing and she was shaking. "You're strong, Kia. Show him that you are a bad queen and take from no one." She didn't reply, but I knew she would be able to do this. I was proud of my girl. "Tomorrow is going to be a long day, let's get some rest." She nodded as our eyes met and I was glad to see the fiery determination in her pained eyes. Kiera never went down without a fight and I knew this time was not going to be an exception. "Kiera," a knock on the door made me stir and I sat up, last night rushing back to me as I felt the sharp tugging pain clench around my heart. Raven wasn't here. I frowned and looked around before I saw the note on the bedside table. Gone shopping with the boys. I will find the perfect dress for you. See you soon. XOXO. I put the paper down and shuffled up against the headboard to take a deep breath. Come in, I called. The door opened and Dad entered holding a plate of food and a bottle of fruity water. Did you sleep well? He asked, closing the door behind himself. I nodded, my heart thudding, not knowing what was coming. He placed the plate in my lap and kissed my forehead before he went and pulled the curtains open, letting the bright sunshine through the window. I flinched at the brightness, before becoming accustomed to it. Dad walked over to the bed and sat on the edge, facing me. Eat, he ordered. I looked at the food, consisting of sausages, rashers, toast, beans, eggs, and caramelized mushrooms. This was made by one of the Omegas. Dad was a lot of things but he wasn't a chef. I picked up my fork as I began eating slowly, glad I had something to focus on. Dad was strangely quiet and it made me nervous. Who is he? He asked after a moment. So, he figured out I lost it because of my mate. It doesn't matter, I replied, poking my sausage repeatedly. I didn't really have an appetite. He's from this pack, isn't he? Maybe, I said quietly. Did the ASSH0LE reject you? He asked. His voice shook and I realized he was angry, but not at me. I looked up at him, now noticing just how much he was trying to stay calm. Not officially, but I got the picture, I replied with a shrug. The image of them kissing flashed through my mind. My wolf whimpered and I wished she wasn't so broken. I knew she'd get over it eventually. But this connection was something she wanted and needed. I remembered his touch from last night, the way it had sent jolts of electricity through me, the way my entire body tingled and my heart had thrummed at his touch. My stomach twisted and I wrapped one arm around myself, my heart aching. Dad clenched his jaw. He's a sick for that. He doesn't deserve you. He growled. I said. Taking a bite of the toast, I forced myself to swallow, only for it to feel like it was getting stuck in my throat. What do you want to do? My original plan was to allow you to stay here, it being the strongest pack around and the safest for you. Dad said. He didn't mention Alejandro. My stomach nodded. He hadn't guessed who it was, right? But if you want to come home, I would be more than happy. The boys are leaving at 1 in the afternoon, if you wanted to return with them. No. I think I'll stay. I replied firmly. Not only to torture him, but I needed to be here for Auntie Indy. I couldn't turn a blind eye to everything she was going through. Are you sure? He asked as I grabbed the water bottle, taking a few gulps. Trying to get rid of the lump in my throat. Yes. Angel. What do you plan to do? I looked him directly in the eye. Nothing, I'm continuing with my life. I'm not running from anyone and nor am I just going to make things easier for them. I said stubbornly. Dad gave a half smile before looking at his hand. Before the mate bond. Did you feel anything for him? What makes you think it's a guy? It could be a girl, Dad. I said, rolling my eyes. Dad raised an eyebrow. Don't try to change the topic. I pouted. The man was too smart. So, was there? He persisted. I looked down, my heart aching at all the moments I had with Alejandro. My lips quivered and my eyes stung as I stared at the bed covers. My eyes blurred as I fought back those tears. I felt a connection, I whispered. We felt a connection, that was what I wanted to say, but maybe that was my misconception. I remembered his words in that closet. He said I was perfect, but then if I was, why didn't he want me? I forget that not everyone is a monster like me, those words. Dad hadn't replied and I looked up, seeing him frowning deeply. It's not Rayhan because I saw you at the mating ceremony, he said, frowning. I shook my head. Does he deserve you? He asked quietly. I smiled sadly. Does it matter? You're not a child anymore, I know that. I also know that all your life I've been overbearing because I love you. However, I also know you're old enough to make your own decisions, make mistakes, and learn from them. I never valued the mate bond. I loved your mother before I knew she was my mate, and I was ready to reject my mate for her. As a father I want to say, forget the ASSH0LE, move on and you'll find someone better. But as an adult to an adult, trying to pretend I'm not giving this advice to my daughter, I'm going to say this: if you think he's worth fighting for, that you feel something for him, then don't let him go so easily. Sometimes the harder choice isn't always the easiest. If you had felt nothing for him, I would have told you to reject him, but if you think there was a connection, then fight for it. I looked at Dad. His words shocked me. He looked slightly amused by my surprise but gave me a wry smile that didn't reach his eyes. He continued. You might not know, but your mother kept pushing me away. She didn't think I cared enough, or thought I'd betray her. I didn't have the best track record, I was a player and I won't deny it. I had to fight for her, show her she meant the world to me. She had gone, it had affected her. I won't take credit for her healing because that was all her, but, without knowing who your mate is, I can't really say much, just sometimes there's a reason behind a person's refusal. I'm not saying he's right, but there may be underlying reasons. I'm not saying accept someone after they reject you, or to forgive then, but you know him better than I do. Do what feels right. Dad's words were deep and they made sense. To learn how he had fought for Mom. I know Mom said Dad did a lot for her, but I often just saw Dad as this temperamental alpha who was possessive. I knew he would do anything for Mom, and from the way he was speaking to me now, going against his possessiveness and impulse to cocoon me in safety, I knew it was hard for him. He was just giving me his advice. Advice that was settling deep within me and giving birth to a fierce determination within me. Yes, my original plan was to not make this easier for Alejandro, but if there was even a chance, should I fight for him? The thought of Alejandro accepting me. The way he always said he needed no one, that he was a monster. Did he just need someone to heal him as Dad did with Mom? Even if I was able to, I knew it would take me time to heal from the pain he caused me. This was a choice I had to make alone. Dad sighed and I looked up at him. Your mom is coming tonight. I haven't told her about what happened. She'll probably want to rip him off for refusing you. I will leave it to you to tell her," he said, with a smirk, and I flinched at the very thought. "But speak to her, I'm sure you might be more comfortable sharing what you don't want with me." He gave me a small smile and I shook my head. "No, Dad, I'd share with you too if I was able to. I just need time. Thank you for your advice. I think I know what I want to do. Tonight's the Alpha King's engagement, so I'll be there and so will my mate," I said, making sure my face betrayed nothing at the mention of Alejandro. Dad nodded. "You've become a woman, Kiera, and I know you will do what you want. If ever you need me to step in, I'm there. Don't let the ASSH0LE hurt you. I'm leaving you here under Alejandro's care, but I don't know if that is the right choice." My heart skipped a beat as Dad's eyes met mine. Did he have an inkling? I felt like he did. "Don't worry, Dad, I can take care of myself. Promise me, if gets worse, you'll come home," he said, reaching over and stroking my hair. I nodded. "I promise." Dad stood up and nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good." He walked to the door and I looked out the window. I was the writer of my own life story and I was not going to let anyone else dictate my fate for me. I was going to make my decisions for myself, no matter how hard or painful they were. I was done behaving recklessly and impulsively. I was the destined queen, regardless if that was a position I would claim or not. It still meant Selene saw me as one and I was raised as one. I wouldn't let Mom or Selene down. No, this was here to make a statement, starting from tonight. Alejandro, I lit another cigarette as I stood there trying to regain control of my emotions. In this dark cellar, looking at the Wendigo that I had caught with Elijah and Rayhan. Ever since last night when I had pulled her into my arms. The way it felt. I had never experienced anything like it. The way she made me feel, had been enhanced 1,000 times. It had hurt, knowing I had put her in that state, but I had to remind myself of the reason behind it. I didn't want to hand her to her father, but I had to, before they got near her. "Anything, Callum?" I asked, returning to the present. "It's magic. I don't know. There's nothing I can make of it, I just know that there's magic involved in creating this. It is faint, so not much was used. Which means either they are able to breed these things without magic now or the magic isn't really necessary for it anymore," he said gravely. "So even capturing one didn't help," I said quietly. "I think Miss Kiera might be able to pick up more. She carries Ashton's blood within her veins, Alpha," he said seriously. I felt the pain at her name. "We're doing this without her," I said coldly. "They want her, Alpha. Which means there's a reason behind it," Callum said. I frowned. He had a point, but Kiera was probably already getting ready to leave. I would send the best of my men to protect her, and before she is put at risk I was planning to go to the Galloway Forest tomorrow. I would find answers and get rid of the threat before it reached her. With Kiera being the target, I didn't want to waste any more time. I had enough information to make a start. I didn't care about the risks. If it meant her safety, then I was ready to die. "Apart from what you've already told me, do you know more about the Ashton bloodline?" I asked quietly. "Not much, I'm afraid, but I may know someone who knows a little more about the history of the first families, Callum said. She is very hard to find, but I can try to get in touch with her. Do that. She isn't a wolf, is she? I questioned sharply. No, my king. She is a witch, he said. He was smart enough not to lie to me. I hated witches and I hated liars. Do you think she'd help us? I asked suddenly. He frowned and shook his head. I doubt it. She hates our kind. I saved her once, hence the only reason she will talk to me. He replied, sighing. Kiara's lineage, it's through her mother, isn't it? Considering her mother has her own special abilities, yes, more so through the late Zidane Malone's lineage. Didn't his mother live somewhere up where his pack used to be? She did, but didn't she pass away a few years back? Callum asked. Yeah. Alpha, I would do anything for you, you know that. If you want. I am ready to go back and see if I can get any answers to see if there's a link. His voice was very low, although it was just the two of us in this cell, with the tied-up Wendigo. I looked at him, remembering how I had found him and got him to work for me. He was more than he let on, not only an incredible doctor but a strong wolf. One who was born a rogue, something I had kept a secret. He had been born and abandoned and had lived alone disguised amongst humans, until he had lost control and had run away. He was struggling to not go completely feral and he had lived in isolation, for his willpower had impressed me. When had found him, I had asked him if he wanted to learn to regain control and to be part of my pack. I knew what it felt like to be treated like an outcast and I had seen his will to live and survive. I'm not sending you back to mix with rogues. That would mean kicking you from the pack, hence becoming a rogue. But what if they are involved as you assumed? Even though I know there's a link, there have been increased attacks from rogues too, but Wendigos are made from wolves eating wolves. This thing in front of us was once a rogue, I said with contempt. Well, if the need arises, you know I am ready to do what I can. Callum replied quietly. I nodded, I knew that, but I also needed him here. He was smart and the best doctor I had. Please consider letting Miss Kiara look at this Wendigo, he urged. I said nothing, turning around and leaving the cell. I didn't want to face her, not when I wasn't able to. The pain was still raw and it clawed at my chest painfully. There was one more thing I wanted to discuss with someone I didn't want to see. But it was needed. He needed to teach Kiara control. Well, I guess I better get this over and done with. I made my way to my office, not wanting to return to my mansion. Yeah, I knew she was still there. I wasn't sure if she'd leave with her father or with her brother, but I didn't want to run into her. I wasn't sure how I'd manage if she came before me. Now here I was looking at him who really annoyed me off. His irritating blue eyes were glaring into me like he was trying to read my mind. Something you want to say? I asked. I crossed my legs on my desk and took a drag on my cigarette. No, he said. Why did you call me? You need to teach her how to control her powers. I'm presuming you do know that if she keeps on losing control, she will keep luring them. I don't even know why they're attracted to her, but whatever the reason is, you need to make sure she keeps a cap on her emotions. I said it, and with it, felt guilty. I was the reason she got upset last night. Oh? So, you knew she was emotional last night? How can you just assume that? He asked. My heartbeat quickened and I knew he heard. His face was arrogant as ever, but beyond that, I saw the sharp, calculating look in his eyes. Darien told me she ran away upset. How else do you think I got there? I countered smoothly. Her mate rejected her. Goddess, if I knew who he is, I wouldn't mind slicing his CK inch by inch and then feeding it to some dogs. The perfect punishment for a loser, right? He said, now taking the seat opposite me. Did he know something? I smirked coldly. And you're telling me why? He's from your pack. He said icily. Right, and I thought he might know. Well, if you want to, go ahead. Yet, he wouldn't manage anyway, I was stronger than him. Would you stand up for your pack member? He questioned. I raised a brow, taking a long drag on my cigarette. Each to their own, I'm sure he'll manage himself, I said. That's the thing, even if he was as strong as you, he would lose. Do you want to know why? Was he indirectly threatening me? Not really, but sure, since you don't seem to want to shut up. It's because when someone thinks they're stronger than the rest, they think they're invincible. But just like those monsters, if they're teamed up on, they die. Theoretically speaking, even you're stronger than me, I won't deny that, but if I had my friends and family on my side, you would lose because we would outnumber you. I can take, but when it comes to my girl, I won't give a tone who it is. I'll kill them. My eyes flashed red and I leant forward. His aura swirled around him and so did mine. Both weighed against each other. Mine was stronger, but it irked me that he didn't back down easily. Our eyes glared at each other and I could see him fight against my silent command of submission. If I didn't know better, I'd assume you were threatening me, I growled murderously. Not at all. Just the piece of trash who hurt my angel. He replied, with a smirk on his face. My jaw clenched. Two could play this game. All the best with that. I wonder what kind of moon goddess paired her with. I mean, I've never had a mate, so I can't relate to what you're feeling. I said, relaxing back in my seat. I saw a spark of confusion in his eyes. Seems she did suspect me. Well, if you're done with your empty threats, go find and do what you want. I have an engagement to attend. I said arrogantly, now tossing my cigarette up in the air, catching it in the palm of my hand, and crushing it until the embers were snuffed out. The slight burn stung, but it was nothing in comparison to the stabbing pain continuously. Kiera, I took a deep breath as I entered the same venue as last night. This time I felt 1,000 times different. There was no excitement, but a deep pain in my chest. My mate was going to mark someone else tonight. That had been another slap in the face, but on the way here, Mom had mentioned how the council seemed to want the marking done today too. Dad and I both hadn't told her about my mate. First of all, I didn't get the chance as she and Dad had practically jumped each other the moment Mom walked onto pack grounds, and then Rahana had helped me get ready. Sadly, Raven had gone back home per her dad's orders. Although she had wanted to stay, her dad had heard of the attack and was going crazy, so she had to listen. Her dad reminded her that she was still 17 and under his command. I couldn't blame him, and I kind of agreed. Being around me she'd just be in more danger. I could see many had their eyes on me, and as much as I'd love to say it was because of how I was dressed, I knew it wasn't. Well, not entirely. The rumors about me had spread and now all the unmated alphas were eyeing me like a prize to be won, knowing I had special abilities like my mother. I hated their predatory gazes and their lust-filled eyes. Dad had one arm around Mom, the other around me. I was the only woman dressed in dark colors as I had wanted. I was here to make a statement, and although Mom had questioned me on my choice to go against the dress code, she hadn't said much. Rayhan had offered to accompany me tonight, saying it was just as a friend, but I didn't want to entangle him in this mess anymore. Now that I knew who my mate was, the thought of any other man was off-putting. Raven had chosen a gown that screamed me, yet at the same time, it was elegant. Made up of black sequined lace and sheer-ended panels, it was cut in a mermaid style, with the trail spread behind me. It had long sleeves that were partially sheer and a dipped sweetheart neckline that was sheer down the center, showing off a good amount of cleavage. I wore ended heels, and my hair was curled with half pinned up and the rest down, a small thin vine entwined into it. I had told Rayhana to go easy on the makeup today. Keeping the base dewy, with the soft smoky eye and matte red lips. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard, and after last night, I didn't feel up to the full dramatic look. I wasn't even able to look at the mating ball dress that I had picked out so lovingly. Although when I looked in the mirror I still looked regal, there weren't those excited sparks of a girl wanting to meet her soul mate anymore. I looked like a woman standing in the face of destruction, staying strong no matter how bleak the future looked. Today the venue was decorated in red, cream and gold. The only difference was that there were a lot fewer people. Soft music played in the background and there was the bustle of waiters carrying trays of drinks. Then the pleasant, deep hum of people conversing mingled in with the sense of werewolves, expensive fragrances along with the treats and drinks that were being served. I could sense the alphas and lunas, see the way they sized each other up. Their egos and displays of power clearly rolling off them. I saw Auntie Indy standing with her mate who was busy talking to two other male warriors and I felt a pang of annoyance. I still needed to talk to Auntie about it. Elijah. Uncle Raphael's voice came. We all turned to see him standing there with his mate, who looked stunning in a ended gown, Rayhana by her side in pastel pink. Everyone met each other with hugs and kisses before they began catching up on the latest. I zoned out and scanned the room. They weren't here yet. My heart constricted painfully. You've grown, Kiera. Uncle Raphael's voice brought me back to the present. Oh thanks. Guess I couldn't stay small forever. I said, giving him a smile. My mate's brother. Just the thought made my stomach twist. It felt a little strange calling him uncle now. Where is Alejandro anyway? Raphael asked, now looking around. He'll come soon enough, I'm guessing, Maria said. I saw the uncomfortable look in her eyes, seemed like she didn't really like him. I wonder if there was a reason, or she simply had made that decision for herself. Something told me it was the latter and that irked me. I really enjoyed my stay, it's a shame I'm going home tonight, Rayhana said gloomily. Then we should enjoy tonight, I said, trying to cheer her up despite how crappy I felt inside. She nodded. And drink? She whispered. Rayhana. Her mom warned. We're just going over to the dessert table, I said before excusing us from the adults. How come you broke the dress code? Rayhana now asked, looking me over. Don't get me wrong, it's gorgeous, I wanted to ask you earlier but got so caught up. I shrugged. Didn't want to follow it. She asked. I didn't want to answer that. I looked at the table that was laden with sweet treats and dessert shots. Picking up a cake pop each, we returned to our parents. I had just taken a bite when his deep, rich, seductive scent hit me like an avalanche. My heart pounded recklessly as I slowly turned to look at the man that had just entered, as did everyone else. He looked extremely handsome in a black suit, a white shirt that had a few buttons open, showing off his tattoos, and a few chains around his neck. He held a cigarette in one hand, the other in his pocket. He was perfect. He exuded power and dominance, his aura rippling through the room, showing every werewolf there who the ultimate alpha was. I felt my wolf whimper and my own stomach knotted. I saw his jaw clench as he swallowed and I wondered if he could smell me too. My heart was thumping but I wasn't going to let him get to me. I turned my attention to Jasmine, who stood by his side, her hand resting on his arm ever so slightly, as if she was scared he'd pull away or lash out if she got too comfortable. It's funny, considering they were just yesterday. She looked stunning in a gold shimmery princess gown, her hair was twisted up in a bun with a tiara sitting on top of her head. The perfect pair. That stung, but I kept all traces of my emotions hidden. She looks good I guess, Rayhana said, earning a frown from her mother. I saw her glance at me and knew she wasn't sure about how things were with Alejandro and me. I was glad she didn't bring it up again, and I was even more glad she didn't know about Rayhan and me. Everyone had fallen silent as the king made his way through the center. She does look good, a fitting pair, I said softly. Yes, Mom said with a nod. She looked at me and I saw a sliver of concern in her eyes. Are you okay, Kiera? She asked through the link. Yeah. I replied, trying to focus on keeping my heartbeat steady. I knew he had heard my remark, seeing his brows knot as his eyes now found me. My heart thudded with pain and sadness but I simply looked at him indifferently, I wasn't going to react. I was here to show him that I wasn't going to mourn him. I saw his eyes flicker over me, his eyes flashing red. He swallowed and looked away, taking a drag on his cigarette. I didn't miss Jasmine's look of annoyance as her eyes met mine. Congratulations Alpha Alejandro, Jasmine. Alpha Bill said, proud to see his daughter by the king's side as he hurried over to hug his daughter, then holding his hand out to Alejandro, who simply ignored him. I felt a bit bad as he went beetroot red in front of so many alphas who were already jealous of him for being the Alpha King's future father-in-law. My heart sank a little as Alejandro began conversing with several people as he made his way through the throngs. Not spending much time with any of them, clearly unaffected. I needed a drink, but at the same time, I didn't want to lose my senses, not after how recklessly I had behaved last time. You girls are pretty quiet, Raphael said, looking at Rayhana and me. I don't feel so happy, I'm going home tonight, Rayhana complained, making her parents roll their eyes. Rayhan, who had just come over, chuckled. I must say, all of you ladies look absolutely ravishing, he said, giving his mother a kiss on the forehead, before meeting Mom with a kiss too. He's a charmer, Mom said with amusement. Yeah, Dad said, glaring at Rayhan, who simply flashed him a smirk. I knew Dad wasn't happy about our night together. It's a shame you two didn't turn out as mates, Aunt Maria said, making Rayhan and I look at each other. I blushed as Dad glared daggers at him. Uncle Raphael laughed. Don't make them feel awkward, sweetheart, he said, kissing her forehead softly. It suddenly felt strange to address him as uncle, knowing his relationship with Alejandro. Kiera's mate will be a lucky guy, Rayhan said with a wink as Dad growled at him. I felt a pair of eyes searing into me and I smiled. Rayhan's mate will be luckier, I replied. Mates are an interesting thing, Mom said, there's a reason a couple is paired. She looked up at Dad and I knew, despite the start of their relationship, her belief in the bond was strong, so, mind if I steal Kiera for the night? We're both mateless and I mean only as a friend, he added, glancing at Dad. Dad frowned as Mom raised an eyebrow, amused as she looked at me. I think that's my decision to make, I said, holding my hand out in mock elegance. Rayhan smirked as he took my hand, giving it a kiss, and winked at me. You look absolutely stunning tonight, the color suits you well, care to dance? My heart skipped a beat and I nodded. I felt someone watching me with intensity and I didn't need to look to know whose gaze was burning into me. Well, I could do this after what he did. Of course, it would be my pleasure, I replied. Dad grunted as Mom kissed his neck soothingly. Relax, babe, she said. Before Rayhan and I could even move away, I sensed him approaching. My heart thundered in my chest as Rayhan's brows knitted together thoughtfully for a split second. I turned to look at the couple, who had now stopped in front of us. Congratulations on your engagement, although the deal is not sealed yet, Mom said with a smile, as she met Jasmine with some air kisses. You look amazing. That hurt too. Jasmine smiled confidently. Thank you, Scarlett, you look as stunning as ever, Jasmine replied. Mom did look breathtaking in a silver gown with a slit down one leg. Dad matched her well in a grey suit. She sure does, Dad said quietly, kissing Mom, his hand resting on her. He was quieter and I knew it was because of me. Mom looked a little concerned but said nothing. Well, nothing out loud anyway. I watched them look into each other's eyes before Mom frowned slightly and looked away. Yep, seemed like Dad was really going to let me tell her myself. Brother, congratulations, Raphael said, with a smile. Alejandro replied, his voice making my heart squeeze. Raphael stepped forward to embrace him but Alejandro held his hand out. I frowned, wondering what had happened between them. I saw the flash of sadness in Uncle No Raphael's eyes as he shook his hand. Maria didn't say anything to him and instead met Jasmine. I could feel Dad's eyes on me and I dared not look at Alejandro. Kiera, I love the dress. I had a dress code, did you forget? Jasmine asked with a sweet smile. I don't really follow rules, I replied with a small smile. Yes, it was her big day, but that was my mate she was holding on to. The thought made a fierce flare of anger rush through me and I felt my aura swirl around me, my vibrant purple eyes staring into hers. Everyone looked between us, sensing the tension that had now settled in the all. Alejandro, I looked between Jasmine and Kiera, my eyes staying on the nymph before me. Did she look breathtaking? Seeing her here had knocked me off. I did not think she was strong enough to face me, but she sure was. I knew she was in pain. Even her composed mask couldn't hide the anguish in those gorgeous eyes of hers. From the moment I had walked into this show, I could only smell and see her. She had made a statement, standing out in that black dress that was messing with my self-control. I knew she did this on purpose and it was working. What made it worse was the eyes that followed her around. Word had got out that Elijah Westwood's daughter was a special wolf and I hated it. The unmated alphas watched her like power-hungry leeches, and even those who weren't into power were checking her out as if she was a item. To top it off, Rayhan was being a crazy again. He sure was related to me because he was, who didn't give a tone about consequences. Yeah, guess I made my choice and now I had to deal with it. Is everything okay? Maria asked. I didn't like the woman, never had. She was always scared of me. One of the reasons I left in the first place. She had been too terrified to have her kids around me. I guess she had her reasons. I wonder how she even let them come stay. That must have been RAF's choice, but I would have preferred her keeping her kids to herself. The image of Rayhan and Kiera in bed crossed my mind and I felt my anger growing, but I had no right. I had kissed Jasmine in front of her after knowing she was my mate. Congratulations on your engagement, Alpha. Kiera's gorgeous voice came, making me want to pin her against the wall and her until she couldn't walk. Our eyes met and I felt my heart race. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't calm my down. She gave me a small challenging smile before she turned. Excuse us, Rayhan, shall we dance? Sure. He said, taking her hand and leading her away. For once, Elijah didn't seem annoyed. Instead, he simply smirked, watching them walk off. Alpha Alejandro, Alpha Raphael, Alpha Elijah. We all turned to see Alpha Jake with his Luna. He smiled as he bowed his head respectfully. I saw Scarlet tense and Elijah frown slightly. This is Dad, Daniel, had betrayed them to Zidane. If it wasn't for him, one of their close friends would have still been alive. I didn't really trust him, I didn't really trust anyone. But the rumors were that I killed him. I'm sure he hates me, but still he didn't show it now and never would show his hate for me. That just made him all the more suspicious in my books. Alpha Jake, Luna Ella, nice to see you, Raphael said, always the nice guy. I took a glass of wine from a tray as my eyes found Kiera and Rayhan, both owning the dance floor. He spun her out as he laughed at something she said. I clenched my jaw. This was what I wanted, right? But did it hurt? Want to dance? Jasmine asked me, placing a hand on my arm. No, I said, coldly glaring at her. I saw Scarlet and Maria exchange looks. I turned and was about to walk off when Raphael spoke. There's no harm in entertaining your soon-to-be mate, he said, with a smile on his face. I glared coldly at him. Don't tell me what to do and she's not my mate, I growled bitterly, before I walked off. I hated people. I took a drag on my cigarette, grabbing another glass of wine. Rayhana! Maria called. Uncle! Rayhana said. I scoffed. What did she think? That I'll rip a kid's head off? What do you want? I said, glaring at the curly-haired brat. Will you dance with me? She asked, her large eyes hopeful. Did you not just hear what I said to Jasmine? I said icily. I could see Raphael calming his mate down. It seems like she thought I was going to bite Rayhana's head off. I know. But I'm leaving tonight. I don't know when I'll see you again. I frowned, after all she's seen here. Aren't you scared, kid? No, I came and stayed at your house. We had a movie night. We had fun and not once did you harm me. Your family and I really want to visit again. She said softly. I frowned, putting down the empty glass. Pretty please. I looked at the dance floor and clenched my jaw. One dance? Okay. She said, a smile crossing her face as she took my hand. Her excitement was weird. I saw Rayhan dip Kiara back. Their faces inches apart. My eyes flashed red and if it wasn't for the hand in mine, I was ready to tear to shreds. So, how are you going to manage? I asked as she looked right up at me. She sure was a tiny brat, or maybe I just thought that, but I towered high above her. Oh, I will, she said confidently, taking one of my hands and placing the other on my bicep. The brat wasn't a novice at dancing, it was then I realized I don't think I've ever danced. Well, I let her lead, although I hated being ordered into anything, my eyes were too busy fixated on Kiara. Rayhan's hand was 3 inches above her and I wanted to cut off all his fingers. He winked at her and I clenched my jaw. Rayhana giggled, drawing my attention back to her. What funny? I growled. You like her? She said. My heart skipped a beat and I glanced towards Raphael and Elijah. Shut your mouth, kid. No one can hear us, the music's loud. I'm not stupid, uncle. You know, I like her more than Jasmine. I mean, I wanted her and Rayhan, but you know her mate refused her, and you don't have a mate. You should nab her up. She whispered. I raised an eyebrow. She simply smiled before spinning out. I spun her back but it seemed she had other plans. Letting go of my hand, she twirled, grabbing Kiara by the elbow. Kiara gasped. Her mesmerizing eyes widened as Rayhana spun her around and then let go of her, sending Kiara toppling straight towards me. She gasped, almost falling, and I knew it was because of her ankle. In a flash, I reached her, catching her around her slender waist before she fell. Her hand grabbed my shirt for support, her fingers grazing my chest. Delicious sparks rushed through me, making me lose my senses. My hand tightened around her waist as I pulled her upright, my fingers grazing her back. I heard her breath hitch, her intoxicating scent drowning me as our eyes met. Our hearts were thundering as one, and for a moment, everything else faded away. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.